This is East Asia Tonight.
Good Friday evening, I'm Ateli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. A very dangerous move. Donald Trump's warning to the UK following Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to China to deepen business ties and reset relations. Japan and South Korea boost defense cooperation on AI and unmanned systems, pushing for tighter regional alignment under new leadership. China's Coast Guard increasing its presence around the disputed Diaoyu, Senkaku Islands, logging more than 100 patrols over 5 years. CK Hutchison's stock tanking in Hong Kong after a court ruled its contract to run two ports near the Panama Canal unconstitutional. Ahead on the bulletin, a closer look at China's growing trade and investment footprint in Latin America and how the region is emerging as a new front in global power competition. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that it is, quote, very dangerous for the United Kingdom to do business with China. This follows British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's meetings with top Chinese officials, including President Xi Jinping in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer. I know China very well. I know President Xi's a friend of mine. I know him very well, but that's a big hurdle to go over when you get Canada.
Well, Downing Street did not respond to Mr. Trump's statement. British Trade Department Minister Chris Bryan said that the American president was wrong to say so. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, when asked to comment on the matter, said Beijing stands ready to cooperate with other nations to benefit people of all countries. Keir Starmer earlier today hailed what he describes as real progress at talks, such as the securing of visa-free travel to China for UK citizens for trips under 30 days and greater cooperation in dealing with transnational organised crime.
I fundamentally believe that the more we engage, the more we exchange, the more we take advantage of the opening of access to opportunities, business, art and culture and so many others, then that is the way that we build the mutual trust and respect that is so important.
For more, we are joined by Ollie Barrett in London, and he's covering this story for CNA. Ollie, so how is Downing Street going to respond to these comments made by President Trump? And I guess, is it ready to handle the possible repercussions?
Well, certainly Downing Street at this point, Ateli, is guiding us towards the fact that government sources are telling CNA that this was a trip to meet with officials in China that was very much discussed with the Washington Trump administration beforehand. UK government officials are telling us that the objectives of this trip were set out to officials in Washington, and very much this was something they knew about in advance. And so I think the strategy from the UK government at this point, and Keir Starmer himself, will be reflective of how they've been dealing with Donald Trump's public comments on a number of issues recently, which is not to engage too much in a direct slapping down of those comments, certainly not from Keir Starmer himself, but to quietly continue the diplomacy behind the scenes and make the case for what the UK is up to. The other thing that UK government officials are directing us towards, they're just gently pointing out that it's expected that President Trump himself will be visiting China in the weeks ahead, and they're pointing out that they don't believe that this is wildly different, what Keir Starmer is engaged in China. And so in terms of the repercussions, I think UK officials are hopeful that there won't be too many of those repercussions, but they're very much aware of some of the concern in Washington about elements of the UK relationship with China, such as the recent approval of that massive potential Chinese embassy here in the British capital. You also mentioned the Trade Minister Chris Bryant and his description of President Trump's comments as wrong. He also used some pretty fruity language to talk about what the UK is trying to achieve in China with this visit from Keir Starmer. Chris Bryant saying it would be bonkers for the UK not to be engaging with Beijing.
But how's that going down well at home? I mean, is Prime Minister Starmer's trip, how is that being perceived in the UK?
Very much mixed reviews here, Otelli. There are Conservatives who are aghast, they say, at the way Keir Starmer has been discussing ties with Beijing in China. They are upset at the fact that he has laid out so much for China ahead of the trip. They say, for example, the approval of the Chinese embassy here in London. There are some criticisms in what you might call the right of centre media here in Britain as well. Suggestions that Keir Starmer has not come away from China with very much in terms of business deals or actual progress. Some of those critics say, look, there's a lot on what Downing Street is claiming as progress from this trip on behalf of Keir Starmer, which really amount to further discussions, feasibility studies on services cooperation and financial services, for example. Downing Street is very much hitting back against that, and there are many Labour MPs and supporters of this Chinese trip from Keir Starmer who say actually things like visa-free travel to China for British citizens and business people is a major win, they say. They point to some of the deals that are still being announced. Another tie-up with AstraZeneca that's being announced over the course of the last 24 hours. Octopus Energy here in the UK announcing a tie-up related to renewable energy in China as well. So the announcements aren't quite finished yet as Keir Starmer heads towards the end of his trip in China. But as I say, back here in the UK, mixed reviews as Keir Starmer will continue to try and make the case when he returns to Britain that that trip to China that he has been making will deliver benefits for the UK economy, which has been seeing sluggish growth for some time now.
Right, many thanks for that report. Ollie Barrett for CNA from London. And of course, we'll be getting more insights on the UK leader's visit to China when we speak with Steve Tsang, Director of the China Institute at SOAS University of London, a little later this hour. Now, Japan and South Korea have agreed to upgrade defense cooperation to ensure peace and stability in the region amid a challenging global security environment. Japan's defense chief Shinjiro Koizumi speaking with his South Korean counterpart An Gyu-bak, highlighting the significance of maintaining strong security cooperation with the U.S., calling it more important than ever. The two U.S. allies have forged closer ties in recent months under new governments as they aim to put years of frostiness behind them, stemming from Japan's occupation of the Korean Peninsula in the early 20th century.
今回の会談では北朝鮮情勢を含め両国を取り巻く地域情勢について意見交換し、厳しさを増す安全保障環境の中で両国が地域の平和と安定の維持のため協力していくこと、また日韓日米韓協力を継続していくことで一致しました。
South Korea's defense minister also stressing that bilateral ties should keep looking forward. The pair have agreed to conduct joint naval search and rescue drills, and they also plan to work together on artificial intelligence and unmanned weapons systems following their talks in Japan's port city of Yokohama. The two defense chiefs last held security dialogue on the sidelines of the ASEAN defense ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur in November. There, they also noted the importance of trilateral cooperation with the US in the face of North Korean nuclear and missile threats. Well, no agreement on tariffs reached yet after talks between South Korean Industry Minister and U.S. Commerce Secretary. This comes 3 days after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to raise tariffs on South Korea to 25% from 15%. Mr. Trump said Seoul did not live up to a trade deal agreed last July. Well, under the agreement, the Asian nation has committed to investing $350 billion, among other pledges, in return for lower tariffs. South Korean officials say it is prepared to speed up legislation needed to deliver the investment. Trade talks between both sides will continue tomorrow. President Lee Jae-myung says that South Korea will ramp up investigations on Cambodia-linked scam groups targeting its citizens, warning his commitment to their safety is not just empty talk. Well, in a social media post on X, Mr. Lee cited a report saying Chinese crime syndicates based in Cambodia now avoid recruiting members from his country, fearing a police crackdown. He ordered tougher action on transnational crimes targeting South Koreans, especially in Southeast Asian nations, and the confiscation of illicit proceeds. Last week, 73 South Koreans detained in Cambodia were repatriated to face investigations at home, marking the largest return of criminal suspects from a single country to date. So far, 136 suspects have been apprehended under a joint operation between the two countries. The traditional form of election campaigning in Japan sees candidates appealing to voters on the streets, holding rallies, and handing out flyers. But social media is set to play a more prominent role in the lead-up to a general election happening on the 8th of February. And CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida has more on the rules and the risks.
Japan approved the use of the internet for campaigning in 2013 with the amendment of the Public Offices Election Law. Similar to face-to-face canvassing, this is allowed only up till the eve of Election Day. And under-18s cannot take part in any form of campaigning, even if it's just reposting or sharing content. Ordinary voters cannot send emails in support of any party or candidate to the electorate. Malicious slander and abuse are also forbidden. Back when the law was changed, there were fears it could lead to the rise of smear campaigns due to the anonymity the web offered or the spread of misinformation. And these concerns grew as the use of social media in election campaigning expanded. Last year, the law was revised again to require platforms to respond to requests to remove false information with penalties for violations. Despite this, some 9,400 accounts were found to have shown bot-like activities during the upper house elections in July, according to Japan Nexus Intelligence, which analyzes social media messages. The posts included criticisms of then Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and false narratives about Japan's stance on foreigners. The analyst warns there are spikes in posts targeting current leader Sanae Takaichi, for instance, in the lead-up to the lower house polls in February. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara warned about fake and erroneous information at a news conference in January. He said he is calling on social media operators to take necessary measures. Some local governments are also stepping up measures to prevent the spread of fake news, election-related or not. In December, Tottori Prefecture passed a law allowing its governor to order the user or platform to delete defamatory posts. Users who do not comply will face a fine of up to 50,000 yen or nearly $330. Michio Ishida, CNA, Tokyo.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, foreign workers in Japan hit a new record in 2025, pushing immigration to the forefront of the election debate as support grows for far-right parties. Plus, South Korea's industrial output for 2025 marks its slowest growth in 5 years, despite a double-digit surge in chip production.
Thailand is heading for a snap election. But behind the campaigning, a border dispute with Cambodia remains unresolved.
Will
the conflict influence who Thais pick as their new leader?
They have to accommodate these nationalist feelings, that is to make Thailand great again.
And will the ceasefire continue to hold? Insight, Thursday on CNA.
Whoa.
Singapore's small, but not when you include the water surrounding it. And that's what I'm diving into.
So the fishes will be attracted to your LED lights. They'll jump into your boat once in a while. Something just hit me.
From night kayaking to the fish hall at our largest wholesale seafood market.
If you eat this prawn, you will become Superman.
After dark on Singapore's waters. Walk on the wild side. Saturday on CNA.
When deep ocean currents and hot mountain springs meet the scorch of fire and the relentless sun, an ancient alchemy awakens.
Walay mo tuyong kanang pagluto ang pinaka-lisod tungod sa kainit kayo.
Across Asia, a handful of artisans are reviving the oldest craft on Earth.
1200年前から塩作りをしていたという記録がありましたので、もう一回塩作りはできないのかというところがきっかけです。
Ash, coconuts, bamboo, seaweed, and even the moon. 6 makers, 1 elemental craft.
もう塩についてはもうどんどん極めていきたいなと思います。
Salt of the Earth, Sundays, 8:30 p.m. on CNA.
Hello again. It is now time for your business update with Henry Yin. So, Henry, the big news today is Panama court striking down CK Hutchison's port contracts. Tell us more about that.
Well, that's right, Otelli. And the Supreme Court ruling that the concession allowing its unit, Panama Ports Company, to operate 2 ports near the Panama Canal was unconstitutional. The firm has been controlling those facilities since the 1990s in a major waterway that carries about 5% of global maritime trade. The decision was made following a lawsuit filed by Panama's controller after a government audit allegedly found irregularities. Panama Ports said it has not been formally told about the ruling, but is arguing that it lacks legal basis and risks the livelihoods of those that depend on port activity. China's foreign ministry added it will take necessary measures to protect the lawful rights of Chinese firms. Well, the court's decision sent shares of CK Hutchison tanking as much as 5.7%. That's its steepest fall since April, but it has since pared back some of those losses. The court ruling is likely to complicate CK Hutchison's plans to sell its portfolio of ports to an international consortium led by BlackRock. Beijing has been criticizing the sale, calling it a move giving in to American pressure. But U.S. President Donald Trump praised the deal, which took place as he was seeking to bring the Panama Canal under American control on claims it was under Chinese influence. For more, Gary Ng, senior economist at Natixis, is joining us live from Hong Kong. Gary, so Panama's Supreme Court has sided with the Attorney General in declaring the contracts unconstitutional. So what are the immediate implications on the ports operator CK Hutchison as well as local workers there?
Well, right now, everything will go as usual until there is another operator. So, which means CK Hutchison will still be operating the port until further notice. But of course, the bigger impact here is really what will happen next. And indeed, I think from a legal perspective, it's probably quite hard to challenge this decision. So this is basically means that it will be an ongoing tug of war between the US and China in the future.
Well, China vows to protect its companies after the ruling. Does this development raise the risk of heightened tension between Washington and Beijing, particularly given the strategic importance of the Panama Canal?
Indeed, yes, I would say so. And especially if you look at where the US and China are competing around the world, it's basically every critical technology and infrastructure from electric vehicle to space and then to ports. So I think this is definitely like an area that China will react on, even though we're not so certain how would this be made happen. So I do expect probably some stronger statement from China China on this issue. But having said that, it's probably quite hard for China to really do anything on Panama. It is really about the relation with the U.S. In other areas.
Well, in the meantime, President Trump had previously framed the proposed sale as a strategic win, moving the port assets under majority U.S. ownership. Some analysts say that this ruling actually assists Trump's ambition. So what will the Trump administration do next?
Well, of course, the biggest possibility or what Trump wants is really at least a majority ownership of the Panama's canal, which the current court ruling is actually acting in favor of that. But beyond that, I guess there's still some room to bargain with China in terms of what will be the ultimate percentage of the operator that will be controlling this canal. Or even if you look beyond what happened in Panama, there's still many ports that CK Hutchison is trying to sell globally. So will that be a chance that China can get a bit more in some of the strategic areas like Africa, or the US can get some of those in Europe? So I guess there's still a lot of possibility within this deal. So it doesn't exactly mean that, China is totally out of the game. There could be like some concession here and there in the future.
Well, since you mentioned about the room for bargain, and Beijing actually has reported to encourage state-owned shipping giant COSCO to seek a controlling stake in the assets as well. So does this ruling this time around create an opening for China to increase its influence over the deal?
I would say that yes and no, because on the one hand, China has always been trying to exert further pressure in the deal. So I guess the influence and pressure has already been quite tough already. But having said that, at least the ruling opened the box that basically CK Hutchison will probably need to give a part of the interest. It is really like a timing for the reshuffling. How to reshuffle, we don't know. But I guess China will still consider this as a window of opportunity to bargain. We're just not sure whether this will tilt towards the good or bad side for China.
And also, does this ruling significantly increase uncertainty around the deal between CK Hutchison and the BlackRock-led consortium as well, given that the changing laws or regulatory frameworks can be a lengthy and complex process?
Well, I would say that for CK Hutchison, definitely there will be an impact on the asset valuation, because originally it is really one package altogether, bringing $19 billion cash flow towards the firm. But now, if it need to give up part of the asset ownership, or if it need to break it down into smaller asset and then sell to different investors, definitely that could be an impact even for the interest from some of the investors like BlackRock. So I guess for Trump, definitely he still wants US firms to do it. So probably we will see US firms acquiring some of these assets, but the price is definitely highly uncertain. And geopolitically speaking, globally, I guess this also increased the risk premium for holding all this port, because you just don't know whether this can happen again.
Right, a lot of uncertainties there. Thank you so much indeed, Gary, for your analysis. Gary Ng, senior economist at Natixis, speaking to us live from Hong Kong. A mixed picture on South Korea's economy. Latest government data show that industrial output grew at its slowest pace in 5 years in 2025, even as the semiconductor sector surged. Industrial output rose just 0.5% last year, the weakest growth since the COVID pandemic in 2020. That's despite a 13% jump in semiconductor production, driven by the global AI boom. Retail sales edged up 0.5%, marking the first rise in private spending in 4 years. That was helped by government consumption coupons and stronger demand for big-ticket items like cars. Facility investment also grew for a second year, supported by chip-related machinery, though construction activity fell sharply. Japan's foreign workforce hitting a record high in 2025. The population rising 11.7% on year to about 2.57 million as of October. And that's about equivalent to 3.8% of all workers in Japan. Well, the number of workplaces with at least one foreign employee also reaching an all-time high of 371,000. Well, the data release like to feed into election debate about rules on foreign workers. Japan's foreign population is relatively smaller as compared to other developed economies, but its rapid increase as well as over-tourism has been stirring xenophobic sentiment and bring far-right parties such as Sanseito into the spotlight. Other groups, including the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, are prompting tougher action on foreigners. But recent surveys are indicating that Japanese firms are in desperate need for labor. A Bank of Japan study found that corporates are facing the most severe labor shortages in 34 years. And BOJ Governor Kazuo Ueda also recently pointed out that there is limited room to boost domestic workforce. Female labor participation is already on par with Nordic countries, and Japan has the second highest workforce among people aged 65 years and older in developed economies. And that's all for business. I'll tell you back to you.
Thanks so very much for that, Henry. Right, we're going to go for a break now, but coming up on East Asia tonight, unpacking President Trump's warning to the UK. What danger is he flagging? And Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Asia-Pacific strategy as he heads to Japan next.
The weather brought to you by Nippon Paint.
Washable, anti-mold, durable, strong coverage. Nippon Paint Odorless, Singapore's most popular paint brand.
Supporting Singaporeans as the world of work changes.
Be future ready, not future shocked.
Coffee's getting more expensive. Can home brewing cut the cost? Plus, this Gen Z's dream job paid to take his skills on the road. Money Mind, Wednesday on CNA.
Biodiversity is booming, which is inviting for some local foragers and farmers who embrace edible wildlife.
We're the largest organic banana grower in Singapore.
This is jam.
Amazing. Yeah. So the mulberries are from the garden.
No, they're delicious.
Singapore is ramping up conservation efforts locally and across the region.
I really do love reptiles and finding out about them, so I really love my job.
Building must relate to the lives of the people.
目前还是一直要创新一些新的东西，我也不希望是人家把我看作是80岁的人。
There are those who dare to be different, who have made their mark in Singapore and beyond.
You have such big dreams, you want to change the world with your art.
Obviously, every fighter wants to win, so all you can do is to prepare yourself to win.
You're watching East Asia tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Japan and South Korea agreed to upgrade defense cooperation. Officials say to ensure peace and stability in the region amid a challenging global security environment. China's Coast Guard upped pressure around the Diaoyu Senkaku Islands. State media says Beijing logged more than 130 patrols over 5 years and just last year maintained a record near-daily presence. And US President Donald Trump warns the UK about doing business with China following the British Prime Minister's meetings with top Chinese officials in Beijing, including President Xi Jinping. And for more analysis, let's bring in Professor Steve Zhang, Director of SOAS China Institute at the SOAS University of London. Well, thanks, Prof. Zhang, for joining us this evening. Okay, so let's just talk about how Washington has fired this warning shot. In plain terms, what is Mr. Trump flagging when he talks about danger, and who and what is he trying to influence here?
Well, probably Mr. Trump was saying that it's a danger of displeasing him more than anything else. There really isn't that much of a trade deal between China and the UK from the Starmer visit. So there really isn't anything very specific that is particularly dangerous for the UK, except that a danger of harming UK relationship with the US.
So back to, there were quite a few deliverables, though. Because from Beijing's side of the equation, we're talking about visa-free travel, those whiskey tariffs, AstraZeneca's investment, all of that. When you're looking at all of this, what does that reveal about China's negotiating priorities right now?
Well, it means the Chinese really were negotiating very toughly with the UK. Considering the Prime Minister invested a lot of political capitals to approve the mega embassy for China in London, and all he got is a huge investment in China by AstraZeneca, creating jobs not in the UK, but in China for China. The visa-free travel is something that other European countries already enjoy, so the UK is playing catch-up there. And in terms of some of the other agreements, the whiskey tariff deal is really very small beer, even though it is good for Scottish whiskey industries. If we're looking at the kind of agreements that are otherwise involved, they are mostly framework agreements to try to put relationship on a better footing. But whether anything will come out of that remains to be seen.
And also, I want to talk about the timing here, because Japan comes immediately after China. Starmer heads to Tokyo tomorrow, at least that's what the reports are saying. How do you think that visit fits into the UK's broader Indo-Pacific strategy, especially coming so soon after the China visit?
Well, I think that was very much by design. It is a kind of, if you like, balancing act by the British Prime Minister to reassure regional allies of the UK, in particular Japan, that the putting of UK-China relations on a much more solid footing will not be at the expense of UK-Japan relationship. UK and Japan are genuine strategic partners with a lot of shared values and common interests in ways that the UK and China simply do not share.
So then if London is trying to, reset with Beijing here, do you think Prime Minister Starmer need to say anything extra in Japan to Ms. Takaichi to reassure that, Tokyo is very much on their side and that the UK isn't drifting?
I think we have to be very careful with the kind of rhetorics that politicians use. It's one thing for the Prime Minister to say that he was there to reset relationship between the UK and China. I think that is an exaggeration. There is no reset. There's no fundamental change in the relationship between UK and China. It is putting the relationship more back on an even keel, something that we really need to have, given that China is a very major factor in the world that have significant implications for UK. We should be having a good, strong relationship with China so that we can discuss not only matters of common interest, but matters that we disagree.
So, Professor, so I'm hearing what you're saying. No reset in China-UK relations, just trying to stabilize things somewhat. But in terms of deliverables in Japan, Professor, what sort of outcomes should we be watching out for? I mean, maybe with respect to defense, for instance.
No, I don't think the Prime Minister's visit to Japan on this occasion is a major visit where they are going to be discussing a lot of specific on deals and things. That is not, I understand, to be the purpose of the visit. It's much more of a meeting over dinner to reassure the Japanese Prime Minister that UK-Japan relationship remain very strong and we are very much working together. And I would expect the Japanese to respond very warmly to that. By having that visit being planned well in advance, clearly is something that was reassuring from the perspective of Japan. They don't want to be left out.
So, Professor, how do we judge whether all of this travel that Keir Starmer is doing, if that actually translates into lasting influence? I mean, what are some of the indicators you'll be watching out for in the coming months to see whether Starmer's partnership with Asia is paying off?
Well, I think the partnership with Japan is a long-standing and a strong one. I don't think we're going to be seeing any serious difficulties with that. Now, in terms of the changes in UK-China relations, I think what we should be really looking at will be whether the Chinese will live up to the rhetoric of cooperation over the supply of small boats and engines for small boats for illegal immigrants to cross from France into the UK. If that doesn't actually even happen, then it is going to be very difficult for the Prime Minister to reassure his political critics within the UK that he has actually got much of anything from China at all.
So, I mean, all in, how would you rate Starmer's, performance on the ground so far? I mean, with his, meeting of Chinese business officials with the president himself. So, in Shanghai and beyond, in other words, what would success actually look like for Keir Starmer?
I think the Prime Minister has done what really would have been the expected ballpark area. It would not have been realistic to expect the UK to have got truly big trade deals from China that could potentially include Chinese investments of some of their cutting-edge, technologically based industries in the UK and share that technology, particularly in the green energy sector. The Chinese are never going to do that anyway. So I don't think that kind of expectations would have been realistic. And it's important that the UK must have good working relationship with China. And I think the Prime Minister has achieved that, but he has not achieved the kind of business deals that people were hoping and expecting that perhaps he would be able to deliver.
All right, many thanks for your insights. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Steve Tsang, Director of SOAS China Institute from SOAS University of London. Thank you. And we have more on the British Prime Minister's visit to China. Well, that can be found on our website, cna.asia, and on our mobile app, including this analysis on what his visit says about Western hedging in a Trump era. Well, the U.S. has advanced 4 Taiwan-related bills that aim to give a boost to the island on fronts ranging from the security of communications to diplomatic influence. And they cover risks Taipei could face from China. Well, the move by the influential Senate's Committee on Foreign Relations is seen as a signal to the White House that Washington's partnership with the island is a priority. For the bills to become law, they still need to be approved by both the Senate and the House of Representatives and signed off by President Trump. The Undersea Cable Resilience Act, for example, covers the monitoring and contingency planning for Taiwan's crucial communication infrastructure. Such cables that carry virtually all of the island's internet and telco traffic are deemed vulnerable, with a surge in suspected sabotage incidents in recent times. The Strategic Subsea Cables Act builds on this, aiming to improve U.S. strategic coordination with allies in key regions. Well, the Taiwan Allies Fund Act is aimed at countering Chinese diplomacy aimed at Taipei, proposing some $120 million to help countries that maintain ties with the island. China claims Taiwan as its own and has been ramping up diplomatic and military pressure on Taipei in recent years. And this has prompted the island's ruling party to boost defense spending in a bid to improve its capabilities. Now, Taiwan, meantime, says that its locally built submarine has completed maiden underwater sea trials. Now, this is a major milestone for Taipei's ramping up of its deterrence against the Chinese Navy and for its ability to protect vital sea lanes. Well, the local firm behind its construction said that the $1.6 billion submarine had undergone a shallow water submerged navigation test off the southern port of Kaohsiung. Taiwan's indigenous submarine program relies on expertise and technology from countries including the U.S. and the UK. The combat system, for example, is designed by American defense firm Lockheed Martin and carry U.S.-made torpedoes. The island hopes to deploy 2 of such vessels by 2027. Developers are looking at possibly equipping later models with missiles. A Chinese state media CCTV says that the country's Coast Guard has conducted more than 130 patrols around the disputed Diaoyu Islands, also known as the Senkaku Islands, to the Japanese in the last 5 years. In all, it deployed a combined 550,000 maritime vessels, along with 6,000 aircraft sorties. And in 2025 alone, the China Coast Guard had maintained a near constant presence in the disputed islands for 357 days of the year, a record high. Now, China disputes Japan's claim over the islands, and it has long been a source of tensions between the two countries. Just last month, the area was the site of a maritime confrontation between the two sides. Now, some Japanese officials have reportedly been urging fishermen as well as local politicians to steer clear of the disputed islands for fear of escalating diplomatic.
Hitoshi Nakama says he's not just a fisherman. He sees himself as a frontline defender of Japan's claim to disputed islands in the East China Sea. Sailing over 100 miles from his home port on Okinawa's Ishigaki Island to the Senkaku Islands, Nakama dodges Chinese Coast Guard ships to fish in the contentious waters. But since late last year, some Japanese officials have been discreetly urging him and his peers to steer clear of the islands. Japanese Finance Minister Satsuki Katayama was a long-term advisor to the nationalist group that supports and funds Nakama's voyages. But at a meeting in Tokyo on December 19th, Nakama says she appeared to put pressure on him to stay away from the islands.
片山大臣が言ったのは小さいいざこざがだんだん大きくなってそれが戦争につながるんだよねだからやめてほしいよねと言いたいことだったと思う
The requests signal an abrupt shift after years in which Tokyo tacitly accepted such trips. The islands, administered by Japan but also claimed by China, have long been a flashpoint in relations between the two Asian powers. Ties have deteriorated since Japanese leader Sanae Takaichi angered China in November last year by commenting on how Tokyo might respond to a Chinese attack on Taiwan. The Prime Minister's office and Japan's foreign ministry declined to address questions about the requests to fishermen. China's foreign ministry told some right-wing Japanese had repeatedly entered the waters of the islands in the name of fishing to provoke and cause trouble. It added that maritime issues should be addressed through dialogue and consultation. But Nakama and his nationalist backers say they are determined to reverse the decline in fishing around the islands, arguing that such activity helps demonstrate Japan's control.
いや、この船がある限りはもう行きますよ。行き続けますね。
Kim Jong-un has vowed to transform North Korea, announcing a slew of construction projects weeks before a key party congress is expected. The North Korean leader made the comment as he presided over the ceremony for one of these projects, the first of this year under his regional development drive. He added that his policy will transform a third of the country as he hailed soldiers mobilized for the construction work as, quote, creators of the people's well-being. Mr. Kim has been spearheading his country's regional development policy to build modern factories in 20 cities and counties each year over a 10-year period, with the goal of raising living standards. North Korea's construction boom has also coincided with its development of lavish coastal and mountain resort in recent times, as the country seeks to attract more foreign visitors. Coming up on East Asia tonight, we'll look into China's deepening trade and investment in Latin America and what it means for global power rivalry.
On this episode of Singapore Hour, think Singapore is all skyscrapers? Imagine a holiday deep within its jungle heart.
It almost feels like you're not in Singapore, but you are, and maybe that is the magic of coming here.
Then step into style with handcrafted shoes made just for you.
The bespoke shoemaking process is a long one. That could mean about a year from the initial order.
You don't want to miss Singapore Hour tonight on CNA.
Saturday on Japan Hour. Cycle to Shimane Prefecture, famed for the Matsue Castle.
そして中は左側通行です。なぜ左側か。お主、刀がここにある。
It's easy to see why Shimane is the land of legends.
好きっていうものだけですね。好きでやりたいって思ってやって。
Japan Hour, Saturday on CNA.
Japan Hour is brought to you by Sumitomo Corporation. MUFG, committed to empowering a brighter future. Zip Air, no fuel surcharge from 216 Singapore dollars. And IHI.
The United States sent a clear message to China with the capture of Maduro. And that is to stay away from Latin America.
We don't want to have China there.
China will never buy any story by any country in the world that they have the military capabilities to deny China's access to the great continent of Latin America. No way.
When it comes to Chinese investments in Latin America, Venezuela is just the tip of the iceberg. China is involved in 37 ports across the continent. Much of China's lithium comes from the lithium triangle of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And major Chinese brands like EV manufacturer BYD has set up factories in Brazil.
You will find that there is mounting pressure on Latin American governments.
China and the Global South, 31st of January, Saturday on CNA.
With the uncertainties of the financial world, where does our economy truly stand? Keep up to date with the latest market trends and get the in-depth analysis that you need to understand the forces driving the global economies. Kickstart your day with an informed view of the business world. Asia Business on Asia First, weekdays on CNA. Brought to you by UOB.
Singapore has unveiled a midpoint update on a refresh of its economy. Behind the plan is the aim of creating good jobs and achieving average GDP growth of 2 to 3% over the next decade. Well, the country's Economic Strategy Review Committee says that Singapore will have to work harder, take risks, and be more intentional in its growth strategy.
Singapore is known as a highly developed and mature economy. But its leaders believe the next phase of growth will be harder than the last. Rising protectionism, technological disruption, climate transition, and an aging population are converging to brew a perfect storm.
Today's crisis that we are facing is very different.
it is going to be a different world that we are going to emerge from. We are never going to go back to where we were. Global competition, great power contestation, and might is right. That kind of approach is very different from where we were before. Rules-based system is now under threat. So these are new territory that we are entering into.
Amongst the recommendations is a proposal to shift towards what the committee calls an AI-empowered economy, lifting productivity across all sectors. It's calling for a national AI workforce strategy to help students learn with and beyond AI, and enable workplaces to experiment with the technology. The plan also leans on trust and leverages Singapore's reputation of offering new technologies and trusted digital services.
Our ambition is when someone thinks about AI leadership in the world, they think about Singapore. Building up industry applications, a portfolio of problem statements, interesting things for people to do, strengthening our talent pipeline and bench, and also uplifting our broad base of SMEs to encourage them to adopt and benefit from AI.
At the same time, Singapore is looking outward, anchoring promising companies early, supporting startups to scale, and helping local firms expand overseas, even if that means taking more risks.
Some of them will not turn out to be all right because these are emerging. You never know whether they will arrive. But you need to take a bit of risk, invite them to be here, grow with them. Some will not succeed, so be it, but some will grow into MNCs. Then they will grow from Singapore, and we enjoy their growth together as partners of these growth companies.
But long-term growth depends on people. The ESR warns that higher productivity means not as many jobs will be created. Instead, existing roles must be transformed and workers given clear pathways to progress. This entails a mindset shift towards continuous learning and tapping on the national upskilling movement.
This is where we need to also shift a little bit more decisively to intersperse and to weave work and learn together. So for our students, it's really about gaining work experience while they're still studying. For fresh graduates and mid-career workers, it's about being able to continue to gain new skills, to continue their academic upgrading journey while they're still working.
The government is expected to respond to the ESR recommendations during the budget and subsequent debates, with a final report due mid-year.
US President Donald Trump has signaled renewed assertiveness in its own hemisphere as he pressurizes countries in a region. But China's long game in Latin America, spanning ports, lithium, food supply chains and factories, is already deeply embedded, making any retreat unlikely. So how far could this superpower rivalry be pushed? Well, here is an excerpt of our documentary, China and the Global South.
Trade volume between China and Latin American countries reached a record $518.4 billion in 2024. Investments from China have also poured into the region. In the area of critical minerals, China has invested heavily in the lithium triangle, which is one of the most important geostrategic sectors in Latin America. Spanning through Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia, the lithium triangle is home to between 60 to 75% of the Earth's known lithium reserves. China has invested in various aspects of the operations in the three countries. In Bolivia, for example, it was reported in 2024 that Chinese companies invested $1 billion in lithium extraction plants. Lithium from those three countries is critical to grow China's global dominance in the electric vehicle and battery sectors. In the area of shipping, a $3.6 billion megaport in Chancay, Peru, majority owned by China state-owned COSCO Shipping, was inaugurated in November 2024 by President Xi. The port cuts shipping times to China by approximately 23 days and logistics costs by at least 20%. This was seen as Beijing's plan to reroute trade flows. Capable of accommodating ultra-large container ships, the port allows cargo that once had to detour through Central or North America to head directly across the Pacific to Asia. There are plenty of other Chinese port projects in the Western Hemisphere. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a Washington think tank, Beijing is involved in 37 port projects across Latin America. In the energy sector, China's foothold is equally deep. Through a string of acquisitions, Chinese companies have gained control of more than half of Chile's energy industry and the bulk of Peru's power transmission network. At COP30 in Brazil in 2025, China's presence was highly visible. Its national pavilion at the venue hosted a number of events, and diplomats and companies were busy laying the groundwork for more collaborations across Latin America. The United States government did not participate officially in COP30. Chinese EV maker BYD had already opened a factory in Brazil, and there are plans for Chinese solar parks in Cuba.
China and Latin America are complementary to one another. Traditionally, China has been capital-rich, resource-poor, and Latin America has been resource-rich, capital-poor. So for the past 20 years, this has been a great partnership where Chinese capital came in to build infrastructure, to facilitate trade, to do investment, and natural resources and food and mining materials and all sorts of oils and minerals flowed back to China. So it was a very complementary relationship.
President Trump and the U.S. government's pretense that they can resurrect the Monroe Doctrine or insert the Monroe Doctrine to Latin America is completely false. It will never be allowed to happen. China will never buy any story by any country in the world that they have the military capabilities to deny China's access to the great continent of Latin America. No way. No one in the world of today should ever indulge in that fantasy. If they want to have war, they will get war. If they want to destroy China, they will be destroyed.
And that was a glimpse of the new episode of China and the Global South. It will be on air tomorrow, Saturday at 9 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. And you can also catch the episode on YouTube via the CNA Insider channel. And on that note, we wrap up Friday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.